On this week's show, Georgia Southern head coach Tyson Summers relieved of his head coaching duties. Special teams coach Chad Lunsford moved in to the head coaching position on an interim basis. We'll hear from Athletics Director Tom Kleinlein and Chad Lunsford, and we'll also preview the Georgia Southern Troy game, hear from some of the players, and offensive coordinator Brian Cook. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, anything new going
on? Pretty slow news week.
Yeah, well, I think we got to start things off with the big news. I guess it doesn't come as too much of a surprise when the Georgia Southern Eagles are 0-6 on the season, just having lost to a team who was 0-6 in UMass, and not even really much of a contest, 55-20. Athletic Director Tom Kleinlein announced on Sunday afternoon that they would be relieving head coach Tyson Summers of his coaching duties. Again, Mike, I guess when you go back to see the way the Eagles kind of ended last year, they gutted the offensive department as far as coordinators and some of the coaches and brought in new staff and still didn't really show much progress week to week in any area. I think if you could have hung your hat on one, maybe he buys himself a few more games, but 0-6 at this point, I don't think it came as much of a surprise.
Yeah, I definitely think it would have been a different story if they had won the game, certainly, maybe even if it was more competitive. But the problem is that for all the baby steps that we've been trying to highlight and pinpoint as signs that Georgia Southern might be getting a bit more competitive, they did have two pretty competitive conference games, but then they go on the road to a team that they should be able to finally get off the hump against, and not only did they lose, but as you said, put in easily their worst performance of the season. So you don't want to say that anybody lost the team or that anybody quit, but obviously, as Tom Kleinlein said today at the press conference, he felt that what was going in the right direction wasn't going in the right direction fast enough, and that they wanted to act sooner rather than later. Also brought up the new early signing period and how that might be beneficial for Georgia Southern to do something now rather than later, where you could put whoever else is coming in at a disadvantage as to who they want to bring in, how they want to build.
I don't think there's any arguing about the fact that Tyson Summers is a really good guy, and B, wanted to win here at Georgia Southern. I think Athletic Director Tom Kleinlein kind of took a little bit of a chance with a guy that hadn't been a coordinator for too long, somebody who had some roots to the area, and it was coming on the heels of Willie Fritz leaving, and I think they wanted somebody who was going to be here for a while. We all heard how well he did in the interview process and how he poured his heart out on the table with that. I think everybody wanted it to work out, and for whatever reason, it just didn't seem like it ever really fit. He started off bringing in a couple of offensive coordinators that didn't seem to really grasp the option concept, and they gutted that, brought in the new guys, and again, I guess when it continues to struggle, then you start wondering.
Yeah, when you look at the stats, when you look at the on-field performance, it's easy to make the cold surgical decision. They brought in someone who had a good record with what he had done so far, but not as a head coach. It was his first crack at that, whereas you're coming off of hiring a head coach with 2 decades of experience that really started to run the ship from day one. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's easy to see where I guess you just cut bait. You say maybe we just need to go a different direction. But then you look at it from other perspectives. And like you said, Tyson Summers is a stand-up guy. And the more I think about it, the more I've seen it, the more coaching regimes I've been through in any sport. It's kind of like, I don't know, the high school romance with the fans and the coach. And when someone comes in, everybody's excited for them. Everything they say is exactly how it's going to be. Everyone sees your vision. Everyone's cheering for you. And then sometimes things just don't work out, and nothing but the best for him. And you hope that he goes somewhere else, and maybe you see him again in a bowl game down the road. And honestly, from what we've seen in the last 22 months of interacting with him, I'm sure that's what he hopes too. He did his best, didn't quite work out, but he's going to end up somewhere else, and I'm sure he's not going to be looking at the TV hoping anything bad happens to Georgia Southern.
It kind of is a little similar situation to Chris Hatcher. I think he came in, said all the right things, wanted to win here, was from this, grew up in the Macon area. It just for whatever reason for him didn't work out either. I mean, they didn't go 0-6 at any point, but they never really got over the hump. He never really got things clicking like he did down at Valdosta State. You brought up a very good question in the press conference, which was the continuity of a coaching staff. When you bring in Willie Fritz and he brings most of the people that he's familiar with him, you get that continuity. When you bring in Tyson Summers and he's grabbing a couple guys from here, one from here, one from here, it's kind of a crapshoot on whether it'll work or not. It just never seemed to work, neither the first time around or the second time with the new offensive coaching staff.
Right, it does, but again, it's a crapshoot either way. You would think that you have maybe a little bit more information to lean on if you hire a head coach somewhere that says he can deliver his staff, or at least who he wants to bring from his staff. But then again, you've seen it work in other ways when you hire guys who are coordinators or hire guys who are position coaches. Jeff Monken is exactly who I was going to bring up, where he doesn't have the luxury of just walking into the office and saying, who's coming with me? He has to build his staff. So I think Kleinlein touched on that again today too, is sure, it would be great if you can talk to someone who's a head coach who has a few people in tow and you like all that. At the same time, if they're impressed by someone who doesn't have that ability, they also want to hear about, well, who do you have in mind? How are you going to build it? How are we going to make this thing work?
And I think there'll be a little bit more of a microscope. And are you sure this guy is coming? And are you 100% sure this guy is coming this time around? Because I think when Tyson was hired, there was a few people that he had hoped to bring and for whatever reason didn't work out. Well, we did have a chance to hear from Athletics Director Tom Kleinlein, and by the way, we'll get into it a little bit more in a moment, the interim head coach, Chad Lunsford.
Yesterday afternoon, I made a decision through a consultation with Dr. Hebert and members of our athletic foundation. Met with Tyson Summers, and we made a decision to make a change in our head football coach. Tyson and his family have been a big part of this institution for the time that they've been here, and I can't thank them enough for the things that they've done for our program. Our program, with a lot of things that the public doesn't see, is in a very good position right now, and that's due to the efforts of Tyson Summers and his staff. Looking at our team and looking at the effort and the things that we were doing on the field, I felt like we were making progress in a lot of areas, but we just needed to kind of move a little bit faster. And I felt there needed to be a little bit of a change in our leadership. And I didn't see a reason to prolong that. I think we are an institution no different than any institution that's at this level, that people will come here and be successful, and we will continue to battle to keep successful people here. But I'm confident that our institution and the resources that we have here will attract people to this job, and I'm confident that this community will attract successful people, and the resources we have will allow successful people to stay here as long as they desire. So I'm not ready to sit here and say this is a 2 and done or 1 and done or 3 and done type school. I am ready to say that this is a pretty good job, and I know a lot of people are going to be interested in it, and we've got a lot of resources to keep successful people here. One of the things we have is the new NCAA recruiting rules. December 20th becomes a very big day in our signing period. This gives us an opportunity to really take some time and do a search and get somebody in here, hopefully, in time to really attack that first recruiting period. I know through my conversations with our president and conversations with our athletic board, we're going to be able to offer a very competitive salary in our league that will be equal to what Tyson made or more. So I don't feel like we're going to be taking a step back at all when it comes to the financial side of our football coach. I don't want to limit us to head coach. I don't want to limit us to coordinator. I don't want to limit us to offensive guy, defensive guy. Right now, back to your question, one of the things is that we're a job that's out there that a lot of people got to pay attention to our announcement yesterday, so there's a lot of people interested in our job. And so what I have the opportunity now with our time frame is to kind of pare that down and really spend a lot of time developing who it is we want to go after and why. But I do not want to limit us in any way to a particular model. You do an in-season search, it's a little different. Obviously, you got guys that are working every day, and it's a lot harder to spend some time to get to visit with them. You got to kind of work on their schedule, and their schedule kind of dictates when you can meet with them. That's one of the negatives. One of the positives is that you actually kind of get to watch them work. Anytime you do a coach's search, one of the questions you always ask either an existing head coach or somebody that's never been a head coach before is, what is your staff going to look like? How's that going to fit? How confident are you that these guys are going to join you at the next institution you go to? So that is a key part of the process. Staff continuity is a big thing. That's a big thing in success. I've been a part of staffs that have made changes before, and you go through challenges when you don't have continuity, when you're hiring a bunch of people that come from different places. But I've also been part of staffs where entire staffs have moved all at once and they seem to hit the ground a little bit quicker. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our interim head coach, Chad Lunsford. Let's give him a round of applause.
Just want to say, man, what an opportunity. Blessed, unbelievably blessed. Georgia Southern is a very special place to me. Had the opportunity to be here for a long time, and very excited that I get a chance to lead the Georgia Southern Eagles. First off, I want to thank TK for the opportunity, the administration. I want to thank, obviously, my wife and kids for putting up with me in this business and the craziness that comes with it, but very fired up that I'm going to have the opportunity to lead. It's been a whirlwind, obviously, but took the opportunity to sit down with both Coach Cook and Coach Zoe, and we discussed some things, and just things that I think that I can help with, that I think has made this place successful. We've talked through that, and I know that they know which way I want to head with it. Why I am so fired up about this opportunity is, obviously this season has not gone the way we want it to go, but the reason why I'm fired up about it is because I know these guys, and I know what they put into it every day. And since 2013, these guys, are seniors that were here and that are leading our team now. I know how much it means to them, and I know how much they want to be successful. And it's one of those deals where I know, just like TK alluded to a while ago, somebody's going to walk into a great job, and I think this job is great right now. And I think these kids can turn the season around and do a great job. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity at a school that I love, a school that I believe in, and I'm going to do the best job I can do to try to get it.
Hey, Ms. Thompson, everything's fine. It's going to be no problem. I'll have you done in a few minutes.
My name is Paisley Nordhoff, part owner of Complete Car Care, and I want you to come see me.
Well, Mike, we didn't mention it in the beginning segment, but Chad Lunsford comes in, another guy, much like Summers. Everybody seems to like Chad Lunsford. He's made it through 3 different regimes here at Georgia Southern. That should tell you a lot about the guy. He bleeds blue and white. We know he wants to win. We also know that the players seem to really take to him. So if there was somebody, a perfect person you could have for an interim head coach, it seems like it would be Chad Lunsford.
Yeah, made it through 3 regimes, and those are just the 3 current ones. 4 if you count.
That's right.
His first time around originally here with head coach Mike Seawag, 2003 to 2005. He came back at the end of Coach Jeff Munkin's tenure, stayed on when Munkin left, was hired by Willie Fritz, stayed on when Fritz left, was rehired and retained by Tyson Summers, and now, as you said, I think that makes him as good a candidate as anyone for the job. He's been around longer. He's high up in the recruiting process, so he knows all these guys not only on the field, but he's probably been sitting in their living rooms, on their high school sidelines. And right now, when you look at where this season's at and where it is heading or could go, I think that that's what you need, is you need someone not to lick wounds, but someone to rally the troops, as it were. All these guys have a personal relationship with Coach Lunsford, not to say that they don't with the other coaches, but this is a guy who every single person on this team has talked to at some point and then been coached by for other guys. I think all of them are excited to have him, and as he said today, it's not that they're excited that Tyson's gone, but it's a business. The coaches get that. To an extent, the players get that. And most importantly, they all get the fact that 0-6 or not, there's 6 more games to play.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how focused a lot of these assistant coaches are, because they have to be thinking about their families and their future. How many of them will have a real legitimate opportunity to stay on next year? I would think Lunsford, of all the people, again, you're the recruiting coordinator. Whoever's hired here will probably come in fairly late in the recruiting process, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him on board once again, whoever they name as the head coach. Which brings us to this. Who will the Eagles go after? We mentioned to Athletic Director Tom Kleinlein, I get to think some of the positives that came out was the fact that he said whoever will be the next head coach will be able to be paid with whatever Tyson Summers made, or even more, which is a good thing, because you got to figure you're also on the hook for Summers' contract until he may get another head coaching job, as well as he opened up the door for anybody, whether it's a FCS head coach, whether it's a coordinator that's out there. Your thoughts on who the Eagles should be maybe looking for in the future?
Well, I think that Tom Kleinlein's on the right track when he talked about how there is a lot of tradition at Georgia Southern. Whoever's hired will hear about, will you run the option? Will you run this type of option? Will you run that type of option? Will you run option at all? But he made the good point that even as great as the option's been for Georgia Southern, the tradition that supersedes that is winning, and that's a big reason that we are where we are right now, is because that tradition wasn't being lived up to, and that's what he holds highest of all, and I think he's got a great point there. I guarantee there's hundreds of fans out there that want to see something done a certain way, but they are much, much quieter when those wins are coming in.
Exactly. I mean, I think a prime example is Willie Fritz comes in right on the heels.
Everybody had questions. Everybody was nervous.
Exactly. And he comes in right on the heels of Jeff Monken and hits the ground running and ends up reeling off, undefeated in the Sun Belt, and then leads them to the bowl victory. He didn't coach in it, but of course led them to that. Then you got the other flip side of things, and that's hiring somebody like we mentioned, Chris Hatcher, who changes everything offensively, and it didn't quite work. So you've got examples on either side of it working and it not. Well, let's get into the game this week. You've got Troy coming up, and Troy has shown the Jekyll and Hyde kind of side of things. They beat LSU. This past week they had a big win against Georgia State, and in the middle of that, they've lost a couple games.
Lost a couple games and lost one, probably the most surprising, to South Alabama, a 19-8 game right on the heels of that LSU win. Eerily similar to last year when they became the first Sun Belt team to ever hold a ranking in the weekly AP Top 25. 4 days later, they go out and get smoked on national TV in the midweek, so kind of eerie there for them, but this is a good team. It's still a team that's capable of winning the Sun Belt. I know that's what they've got their sights set on, and for Georgia Southern, from what we've seen, they don't match up this year, but at the same time, there's always one of those teams that either you seem to needle or they seem to needle you, and so far, that team for Troy has been Georgia Southern. When Georgia Southern came into the league, they were the better team. Troy's been on a steady upward incline. Georgia Southern, a little bit on the decline, but every year it seems that whether it's Georgia Southern getting up for them or Troy just not playing their best or bounces just going the other way, Georgia Southern's had their number every time.
All right, well, we had a chance to talk with interim head coach Chad Lunsford about the matchup, as well as Brian Cook on how the offense is doing, and we hear from a few players as well.
We're going to miss Coach Summers. He's true blue as it comes. He did a great job here, but unfortunately, it's business, and we got to just move on. Honestly, we got to just focus in and just come together. We just got to get closer. That's really it, as a unit and as a group. And I think that's part of my job, too, as a senior leader. Just got to keep the guys closer and just play together.
Troy, tough team. You guys got your thoughts on playing them?
Like you said, they're a tough team. But we played a lot of tough teams this year and in the past, so we're just going to take it one step at a time, and that's all we're focused on is Troy. So all the other stuff, we'll just let it fall where they may.
It was an emotional scene for everybody. Everybody, kind of sad about the situation, but just like Miles was saying and stuff, you just got to move forward from it. It's just time for a new season. Everybody just get to work and it's back at square one. We had a team meeting. Everybody was just talking, just trying to just see what we can do to just get better each and every single day and stuff like that. So everybody, we understand what's going on. We ready for the challenge to get ready for Troy. after we found out the news, I mean, we felt for him a little bit, and then after that, it's just time to get ready for choice. So now everything feels back to normal. We've been around our coaching and stuff, watching film and everything like that. So
if you do a good job of focusing, you can't let all those things can be distractions. It's hard from an emotional and a personal standpoint because it affects with Coach Summers not being here. That's a person that I had a great personal relationship with, and emotionally that's hard. But you got a job to do, and you can't let yourself think about it, and then what's going to happen after the next 6 weeks. You can't think about any of that stuff right now. There's too much to do. So at this point, it hasn't affected me much. I think you want to build on what they've done this far, and there's progress that's been made. I think early on, in the first 3 weeks, we played against two really good defenses. Statistically, when you look at them right now, they're pretty darn good, and especially in the run defense, and so we didn't see the growth there in those first 3 weeks as quickly as we wanted to. And then in New Hampshire, we didn't take advantage of opportunities that we had. That we just, for whatever reason. And then we played better the fourth week. On offense, we were starting to make some progress. We played better. And then week 5 and week 6, in the first half, you play them like you need to. If you take the turnovers out of the first half the other night and some mistakes, but those first halves, that's about like you need them to be. And what we need to do is just put a complete game together, and now the challenge is you're going to do it against a top 30 defense. You're going to do it, against one of the better teams in the conference, and that's how the schedule falls. So you just got to grow up 1 week at a time.
When you're assistant coach, you're just so locked into your specific thing you're doing, and when you're kind of dealing with the head coach stuff, you're dealing with a lot of different things. You're checking in with the offense, you're checking in with the defense, and I'm helping Coach Dodge with the special teams, and and then the other piece is your day-to-day operations stuff that you got to make sure that you're organized, and you're about to take a road trip, and you got to make sure everything's on point, and the support staff and the coaching staff are doing a tremendous job, but obviously you get pulled in a lot of directions as the head coach.
What do you know about Troy? What do you expect? Have you had much time to look at any game tape?
Yeah, I've spent more time today. Obviously Sunday and Monday was a little bit more trying to get everything organized and everything. Today I've had a little bit more opportunity to get involved in it. They are a very good football team. I think Coach Brown has done a tremendous job and getting them where they are currently. And on offense, they do a really good job with their running back. He's a really good player, and obviously their quarterback's a really good player. And they mix up their run and pass, so much that that's what makes their offense really good. They a spread type offense that it wants to go at a high tempo and get the running back started, but also be able to play, throw their RPOs, be able to get shots downfield, the quick game. But they do a really good job, and they've got a good system.
And defensively, they're one of the better teams in your league.
Yeah, no doubt. They play with a lot of effort, and and I think their defense probably starts from inside out with their inside D linemen. I think they do a tremendous job in the run game. When you watch them, a lot of people don't get a lot of yards on them up the middle, and but they do fly around. They've been multiple on defense. When you look at them, they base out of a 4-down look, more of a 4-2-5, but they really can be multiple. They've got defensive ends that are athletic and that can drop into coverage, can blitz, just different things, and they obviously do a good job on defense.
All right, Mike. Not that we could possibly squeeze anything else in here first of all, your predictions, we have to do this every week. We don't have to, but we are. Your prediction on maybe a score here for Saturday.
Well, I think that I saw a line of about 26 for Troy, and that's a huge number. You usually don't see that number anywhere near Georgia Southern unless they're an FCS team and they're playing a ranked FBS team. But what can I say? The Eagles have earned that honor or dishonor, as it were. And Troy certainly is living up to the hype, at least most weeks. They really want to prove a point. They want to get that first win against Georgia Southern. I think, though, the momentum of Georgia Southern having something to look forward to, having something fresh, I think the guys will be fired up. I know it's a long road trip, a tough place to play. I don't think there's any upsets in store, but I think they play one of their better games of the season. I think the defense finally shores up a little bit and stops giving up the big plays. Troy wins it and comfortably, but I don't quite think they cover. I see them going somewhere around 38-14.
Wow.
We're good at. Are we good at it? We don't discuss this beforehand.
We're pretty close. We do 38-21 was kind of what I was thinking.
I had to do the math on the fly to make sure I was inside my own prediction on the spread.
38-21 is what I'm thinking. I think the offense is going to click a little bit better. I think the defense, as you mentioned, I don't know that 38 is doing such a great job, but it's respectable. It's better than 55. So I think the Eagles will shore things up a little bit as well. All right, before we go, let's mention quickly about how volleyball and both the soccer teams are doing.
Volleyball, a rough road trip out to Texas. They knew it would be tough. Two of the better teams in conference play. They dropped both of those. They're down to 3-7 now. They've still got a little bit more left to play. Volleyball, the longest in conference schedule. They stay on the road. They're taking the trip through Arkansas now. So Little Rock and Arkansas State, two more tough teams. Hopefully they can get it turned around. The women's soccer team, they split a pair at home over the weekend. That keeps them right at 500 in conference play. They'll have a chance to eke over that mark as they finish a regular season later this week at Troy. And then for the men, a tough road trip up to New York, which is somehow in the Sun Belt. But maybe they were confused too. They kind of played like it, a 3-0 loss at Hartwick. They've got some work left to do. They'll be favored in their last couple of games, but they've got to win them both if they want to get a good seed in the conference tournament. And then finally, I know we talked a little golf last week. They're off this week, but we're hoping. We got our fingers crossed. I haven't heard from the travel agent yet. They are out in Hawaii this weekend. I hope to be bringing you live coverage, but I'm not sure.
I wore my Shinkles shirt to try to
curry some favor.
Get some favor in that as well. All right, well, that'll wrap things up for now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.